It's like, Samuel, again? Really? So I'm very grateful to you for your patience, and yet at the same time very grateful for the things that God has taught us in the process. I will be changing. I would say within the next year and a half, we're going to go on to something else. Actually, maybe even within a couple of 3 weeks, all right? We're going to move on and take a whole different tack, different study. And I'll let you know as soon as the Lord lets me know what that will be. Getting the big picture is what we're talking about today. Oftentimes when children are involved in a program that's like a pageant, none of the kids have any idea about the big picture. You have at Pinebrook at the end of the week, when we're there for a whole week, the kids are having a vacation Bible school every single day, and they are doing fun activities and learning verses, learning songs, and doing crafts and stuff like that. And then at the end of the week, you know, all the parents are very happily wanting to see, you know, something that the kids have done and what they learned and things like that. So the kids get up on the front. They're up here on the stage, and some of them are watching. You know, only a few of them actually are watching the person who's leading, and then the rest of them are looking at each other. Others are not looking at anybody. There was one little boy that was just doing this kind of a thing, you know. And of course, everybody was watching him. Yeah, he was having fun, and then when people would laugh at what he was doing, you know, he would do it more. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, it's easy to see that a lot of times we miss the big point. We miss the big picture. And the story that we have here today is a story of many people missing the big picture. And some actually getting it. We'll kind of go quickly through those that are missing it and get to the one who is actually getting it. Well, maybe 1.5. But anyway, you'll find this to be interesting because we need to be thinking about this when we come together to worship. The very first person that we run into, well, let's give you a whole list of the cast, all right? First of all, there are thousands of representatives from the tribe of Judah. There is 1,000 Benjamites. There is the representation from half of the tribes of Israel in the north. There's Shimei, there is Ziba, there is Mephibosheth, and there is Abishai and Joab, sons of Zeruiah, and then there is Barzillai at the end. So, what about these people? And you think about all these people coming together, and they haven't practiced one iota. They have no idea what the others are going to be doing. They are just coming to greet the king who is returning. Now, for those of you who have not been with us to this point, I want you to understand that King David is returning to Jerusalem at the invitation of all of the Israelites after he had won the battle with his son Absalom. Actually, Joab won the battle. He was back in Mahanaim because the soldiers told him not to come with them because he was so valuable. So the war is over, and he has waited, and they have invited, and now he is coming home to Jerusalem, coming to the Jordan River. And everybody is coming to do their part in welcoming the king home. But I'm wondering how many of them are actually thinking about the king coming home. They all have their own kind of agenda, and they all have things that they want to take care of for themselves. And they're forgetting what is the purpose of their gathering. So it's not hard to think, well, you know, with all these people, thousands of people coming together, it must have been kind of motley. I can't think of any other word. It's just like disorganized and full of confusion, and but at the same time joyful and welcoming, and a lot of stuff going on together. So David, it says, the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. And now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, was there. The Benjamite from Bahurim hurried down to hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was, and they crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished. So every single person, it seems, is identified. Well, not every single person, but every person that's mentioned has a part to play. And some of us may not get all the different people's parts, but I'm going to try to help you to see what they might be. So we have Shimei, son of Gera, crossed over the Jordan, fell prostrate before the king, and said to him, "May my lord not hold me guilty." Well, guilty of what? What had Shimei done? We've talked about this before, so some of you are already familiar with the fact that Shimei, when David was being driven out of Jerusalem and he was walking up the Mount of Olives and then had gone over the other side and was heading down towards a little town called Baharim, there was a man that came out and insulted him, cursed him, and threw stones at him, threw dirt at him, did everything possible to make his suffering as bad as it could possibly be. That's the one who's coming here and saying, "Lord, don't hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my Lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind." Don't think about those things. "For I, your servant now, I know that I have sinned, but today I have come here as the first of the whole house of Joseph to come down and meet my Lord the king." So please, David, please don't think about what I did. I'm really sorry. I'm very sorry. And to show that I'm sorry, I'm the first one here. I'm the first one, because I am so glad you're back. I really am. Okay, there beside David is this man, Abishai. Abishai is not pleased. He is not pleased that this man has come. Now, Abishai wanted to take his head off when he was throwing stones at David, and David would not let him. So this man, Abishai, one of David's generals, was riding along with his shield up in the air, stones hitting him in the shield, and some of them maybe even hit him in the head, and he's just furious that David is not letting him ride over there and cut the guy's head off immediately. So, what is his response to this? "Oh, really, don't think about it. I'm sorry. I'm the first guy here," kind of Shimei. What was his response? And he says, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed." So here we have two people that are really all about themselves, aren't they? I mean, Shimei knows he's in big danger and he has done something he should never have done. And the penalty for this is not prescribed, but it sure could be death. He had cursed the Lord's anointed, and Abishai feels very strongly that this is the ripe opportunity. You're coming home. Show these people who's boss. And so he sort of represents the law, doesn't he? You know, what this man did is sinful. It's egregious. He should die. That's right. That's the way it ought to go. Shimei is asking for mercy and that David would forgive. It sort of reminds me of a story that happened later in the times of Jesus when he was going down through Samaria and he was on his way to Jerusalem, and there was a little town that, well, he sent some disciples ahead and said, "See if you can find a place for us to sleep tonight." They came back with word, "I'm sorry, they won't let us in." They have refused any hospitality for us because we're on our way to Jerusalem. You have the Samaritans, half-breeds, who are at odds with the Jews. They've been treated badly by the Jews, and they've treated the Jews badly, so there's this bad blood. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, and they didn't want anybody who's heading on to Jerusalem to stay in their place. Why should we give them any hospitality? Well, then you have James and John. who are like the sons of Zeruiah. You know, that is wrong. That is wrong. And since Jesus, you are the miracle worker, it seems good to us that you should have us call fire down from heaven, and we're going to torch the town. That's what ought to happen. Let's take care of these people right now. You know it's the right thing to do, Jesus. What does Jesus say to them? He says, "You know not what manner of spirit you are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." James, John, you don't know what I'm here for. You're not listening to the big picture. I'm here to save. I am not here to destroy men's lives. I want to save them. David says the same sort of thing to Abishai. He says, and I quote, "What do you and I have in common, you sons of Zeruiah?" In other words, you see, I'm here for one thing, you guys are here for another thing. And then this statement here is, he says, "This day you've become my adversaries." The same word for Satan, adversary. Do you see this Peter saying to Jesus, "You are not going into Jerusalem and get killed. I won't allow it." And then Jesus turns to him and says, "Get thee behind me, Satan. You don't understand what I have come here for. You don't get the picture, do you?" David says the same thing. "You become my adversary. Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? I am not come here to judge. I'm coming here to celebrate that I have indeed been restored. Do I not know today I'm king over Israel?" That's the point. That's the point, Abishai. Today is a day of celebration. Today I know for sure that I have been restored as king. So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king promised him on oath. It would have been nice if Shimei might have waited, until the celebration was over. You see, he was so afraid that he was going to be killed that he came rushing in. Somehow he's got to prove his sincerity and his loyalty. Also, he brings 1,000 Benjamites with him. He's from Benjamin. He has got 1,000 Benjamites with him. That shows he's on David's side. "David, I'm bringing my men over to your side. We're with you." It had the effect, sort of, well, you parents would understand this, wouldn't you? Have you ever had your kids come and ask you if they could do something with their friends, and they bring their friends with them when they ask? Right? What does that do to you? Take your friends and put them outside and then come and ask me. Because all that does is add pressure, doesn't it? It means you wouldn't say no to me in front of them, would you? "Come on, Mom, let me stay overnight at their house." So you get sort of like the same dynamic going on here with David. Here we have 1,000 Benjamites who have just been turned to come back to David. It's not a done deal here, guys. He has an invitation to come back and be king again, but it could blow up at any moment. And in fact, if you look at the next chapter, that's exactly what happens. It all goes to pot very quickly. And so here he is. Is he going to judge Shimei right here and now? No, he's not. Because if he does, it all goes to pot. All of a sudden, you got 1,000 enemies right there with you who say, "You're going to kill one of ours? I thought you were coming back because you wanted us to receive you, and now you're killing one of ours?" See, there's a whole thing that's fraught with problems. Have you noticed in life that there isn't anything that's simple? You can make a decision about one thing, and some people love you for it, and the others hate you for it. That's the way it goes in life, isn't it? So David's caught between a rock and a hard place here, and he does what is the right thing to do. Later on, he will judge Shimei for what he does. but this is not the time for it. And so he says, you will not die. Today you will not die. The next person that comes along is Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth is very concerned that he's been slandered, and he wants to set this record right with David. He's been living with David in David's palace because David very graciously invited him to live with him as an expression of love for Jonathan, because Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son. And while he was living with him, and then David is now had been driven out of the city, his servant, Mephibosheth's servant, Ziba, comes along with all kinds of gifts and donkeys to ride and things like that. And David says, where's Mephibosheth? I mean, the one that I've done so much kindness for, why is he not here with you? Oh, because he wants them to make him king, you see, because he's the son of Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, last king. So David's thinking, I've got a deserter on my hands, a person who is not grateful for all the things that I've done for him. And Mephibosheth cannot leave it that way. He's got to make it right. And so he's right in there in the middle, at the beginning of this celebration of David's return, saying, David, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you now. I need to tell you that, yeah, I wanted to go. I did want to go. But you see, when I went to I sent my servant to get the donkey so that I could ride along and leave with you. Why, the donkey was gone. Ziba took it. And Ziba spread this rumor to you that I was deserting you. And I was trying to get something for myself. But that wasn't true. You can see, because you see my mustache is very long. And my fingernails are really long. My toenails are long. It's because I have not taken care of myself. I have been grieving the whole time since you've been gone. And now that you're back, I'm really, really so pleased. And David believes what he says. And so he says, well, I'm in a rock and a hard place again, because I'm very grateful for what Ziba did for me, because we could never have escaped without all the provisions that he gave. And then I understand that that you really didn't desert me, so I tell you what, you take half, that's how it's going to go. Okay, so, but what's my point here in this story? My point is that here we have Mephibosheth, who's not really thinking about David's coming home. He's thinking about, how do I make myself look good after I have looked so bad? I need to preserve my image before David. But it's at the end of his story here, there is something that indicates that he really does seem to get it. Because at the end, in verse 30, he says, let him take everything. Let him take everything, now that my lord the king has arrived home safely. You see, that's really the important thing, David. You're home. And I don't care really whether I get all the material things. As long as you're home and we're good, I'm happy. So that, I think, is a good thing. Now, I'm going to shift the passage a little bit. Normally, if we follow things right straight down through, well, we're not going to do that today. We're going to skip right up to verse 40. And all the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel had taken the king over. And the reason I'm doing this, I'm changing, is because I want to put all the people in a row that are thinking of themselves. And then we're going to contrast them with the last person that we want to look at. Okay, so all the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel had taken the king over. How many troops? All the troops of Judah. This is important, gang. Half the troops of Israel. Why is that said? Who had the idea first that David should come back? It was the troops of Israel. The troops of Israel had the idea first. The troops of Judah had to be persuaded by the priests, remember? Well, what happened once they were persuaded? And David's coming home. Is anybody waiting for all those who are far north to come and join them? It's sort of like that situation that Paul spoke about in 1 Corinthians 11, about, having communion together. People were sitting down and gobbling the food right away, not waiting for anybody of the poor people to come. They just were thinking of themselves. And he says that is just disgusting, because that is not what communion is about. It's about us being united together in Christ. And here we have the same thing going on here. The Judahites are thinking, right? I hesitate to put thoughts in their minds, but it just appears, okay, that, it's going to take a while for them to come. we'll look really good if we get there first. And so they're rushing in as well. So there's only opportunity for half of the troops of the people of the north to be there, and this is going to cause problems. Let's go and see what happens. So we pass on to verse 41. Soon all the men of Israel were coming to the king and saying to him, "Why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all his men?" Steal him? What is that all about? You see, they thought they were so angry that they were not given the opportunity for all of them to arrive before this event started, that they considered it the Judah coming in and stealing the show, stealing the king, because they came there first. King sees them, king loves them, thinks that they are better than the people in the north, and so in a sense they have stolen the king. Well, moving on from there, all the men of Judah answered, because they weren't going to let this sit. And the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, "We did this because the king is closely related to us. He is part of our tribe. Why are you angry about this? It's perfectly sensible to us. How have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything for ourselves? This wasn't about us. It was about our love for him. He's one of us, and so that's why we're here." Well, that did not persuade the men of Israel. They answered the men of Judah, we have 10 shares in this guy. All right, well, there's 10 of us tribes, and we're all equal. And so we have a bigger share in this guy than you have. And besides, we have a greater claim on David than you have. So why then do you treat us with contempt? Were we not the first to speak of bringing him back? But the men of Judah, being the kind of people they were not to be outdone. They responded with even more harshly than the men of Israel. When we get to the next chapter, you'll see that all of a sudden civil war breaks out again. So does anybody get this? Here we have the king coming home to his family. Did you get this with your own family? You know, when you come home from church and the kids start fighting, and pretty soon mom and dad are fighting with each other. You know, you've been together, you've been so lifted in the Lord, sung really great hymns, and you're feeling great. And then all of a sudden it comes apart at the seams on the way home. That's the nature of people, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're like. And what a sad commentary on us. That somehow we come together here and we worship God and then we fight each other when we get home. Well, that can be explained also by the fact that Satan is very angry that we were worshiping God. And he wanted to make that point for us. But you know what? It's also part about us too. Here we go. This is the last person we're going to compare, and that's Barzillai. Barzillai understood the big picture. He was not at the Jordan to get something for himself. Verse 31, look at him. Barzillai the Gileadite also came down from Rogelim to cross the Jordan with the king and to send him on his way from there. Please understand that Barzillai is 80 years old. How many of you are 80 or over? Nobody's admitting it. How many? Oh, okay, somebody's putting other people's hands up. Okay, all right. How many of you are ready to ride a donkey for miles upon miles just to say, you know, welcome home to somebody? That's not an easy thing to do. Barzillai has really put himself out. He is grateful that David is home. Barzillai is also one of the 3 men who provided food and bedding and stuff like that for David the whole time while he was in Mahanaim. You see, he was concerned for his king. It was about the king for him. It was so much about the king for him that he gave generously to see the king honored. Couldn't bear the thought that the king would have to live in a little town and not have things to eat, not have comfort to sleep. And so he would give. And now I'm going to tell you that many of you here, older senior citizens in our congregation, are like Barzillai. You are. You get it. Many of you get it. that it's not about you, it's not about material possessions, it's not about being comfortable, it's about the Lord. And over the years in your experiences with Him, you've come to know Him in a personal way, and He is what you are about when you come here, when you live your lives. And you are such an incredible asset to this church. Do you understand what I'm saying? In our culture, a lot of times people think old people are not an asset. They are something that is a burden. And that is not how you are perceived here. I see you as like Barzillai. You have matured in the Lord, and you are people who pray, and you are those who think God is the most important thing in your lives. We have small groups, and they're starting up in September. One of the small groups is senior citizens. And it's not a group of old fuddy-duddies that, get together. No, it's not that at all. It is a place of the power of the Holy Spirit when you seniors get together and you pray for the work of the church. I want you to know that you are so valuable to us. Mita was talking to a person about the things that are going on in the women's ministry. And I think it might have been Les or somebody else. And they said, well, I'll tell my senior citizens group and we will pray. You know what? That is so huge. That is so huge. You not only give of your time and you know what's important, you give of your resources as well. Many of you seniors are what keep this church running financially. Many of you are ones that are paying the bill for this building next door because you give sacrificially. Now, I'm not saying that the younger folks aren't doing that too, but I want you to be honored. As we're talking about Barzillai here, who's 80 years old, I want you to know that you're incredibly important for the things that you do in supporting the ministry here in our church. Barzillai is a very old man, 80 years of age, and he provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim. He was a wealthy man. Now, you say to yourself, he was a wealthy man. Of course he gave. Go ahead, he had plenty. He had more stuff. He was looking for things to do just to spend his money. Is that always the way it goes? Oh, no, it's not, is it? You have rich people who are still looking for more and still trying to find other toys that they can buy and use to make their life fulfilled. Just because you have a lot doesn't mean you give a lot. A lot of times in churches, those who have the most give the least. That is how it goes sometimes. I'm so grateful that it isn't that way here. And I'm grateful for how you give, because it really means a lot. And the Lord is using your gifts to make it possible to reach out to our community. Thank you so much. He was not seeking the good life. He recognized that life's not about things, not about what you have or the place where you live or the status that you possess, the pleasures that you enjoy. He said to the king, how many more years will I live, that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I'm now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is good and what is not? He's not talking about moral issues here. He is simply saying, I can't taste my food. Okay? I can't smell it and I can't taste it. So what is the point in going to your place where all the food is really, really good? I can't taste the difference. He says, I can't even see the difference. I can't even hear the difference. Your servant can't taste what he eats or drinks. And can I still hear the voices of men and women singers? I remember my dad. My dad had Parkinson's disease, and my dad also had hard of hearing, and his eyes were bad. When he was in his 60s or 70s, he had to stop flying airplanes because both he and Mom couldn't see well enough to know if a plane was coming at them. All right, so he was not very good in sight, hearing, and the whole idea of Parkinson's took away a lot of other things. He couldn't taste, couldn't swallow. You know what became important to my dad in the last year of his life? He didn't listen to TV. He did not listen to radio. Couldn't hear it enough, that kind of thing. He came to Jesus. The last year of his life, he gave his life to Christ. He found what was most important in life, and he gave himself to the Lord. And then what really turned him on was that he asked his son to mail down to him scripture passages that were this big in letters so that he could read them. That was what really, he wanted to talk. He wanted to hear and to learn about the Lord and his newfound faith. Sometimes, when it takes getting old to realize that, these things don't matter. The material things don't matter. They don't bring the joy that a relationship with God brings. And so Barzillai is saying, hey, David, I can't go with you. I can't even enjoy the things that you could possibly give me. And here's one of the most important things I want to say to you. He says, if you want to give something to somebody, give it to my son, Jim Ham. Give it to him. You see, that's pretty unselfish, isn't it? He said, I could go with you, but I don't need to. I want to die where my family lives. I want to be buried where everybody else is all around me, just like my father-in-law, said goodbye to everyone, and then he passed away in his sleep. He said, that's all that matters to me right now. But he says, if you want to do something for my son. Let him go with you. Let him follow you. Now here's where this applies to us here in our church. Please, you who are seniors, you who know what is most important in life, would you please ask the Lord to give to the younger generation in our church to follow him? Please ask. Could they go with you? Could they follow you? Take my son. Take my daughter. Let him go with you. Bless him. Bless her. And may they come to see what I have learned in these years with you. Pray. Our church is in need of younger families. Pray the Lord of the harvest to send workers. Many of our older folks who have been so active in the ministries of this church are getting tired. They're not telling me they're tired, but I can see it in their eyes. I can see it. We need the younger folks to say, it's my turn. I will take the mantle. I will follow you. I will not be any more part of this generation that is only thinking of itself. That's not true of the whole generation, but it's largely true in ways that are shameful. It's not all about us. And so when we come to the Lord, let us think, what's going on with you? David, you're coming home to be king. That's the important thing here. Jesus, you are here to rule as king in our lives and in our community. That's the most important. Now, it doesn't mean that my sorrows, my pains, my lack of whatevers are not important to Jesus. They are. We see David very specifically meeting those needs as people came to him. But I'm asking us to think like Barzillai. What is the big picture here? When we come here to worship, I introduced the ladies when they sang this morning that they will really, you'll really get a lot out of this. I think I said something like that. And I went, why did I say that? Not that it isn't true, but I should have said something like, Jesus will really enjoy this. They are singing for him. That's the main point here, isn't it? This is a worship service. It is not a what can I get from it service primarily. So we want to speak to him and say, what would you want me to do? Let's close our time together in singing. And don't get your hymn books, guys. I'm going to sing a song. Make me a servant. I know this is a hard one to sing because it's